Now I've had my Nissan Leaf for a year, I thought it would be an interesting question to ask and reflect back on why I originally bought it. I mean, to be fair, at the time I wanted to buy a new, very fast motorcycle, but rather than buying with my heart, I decided to buy with my head. I recently handed back my company car, and as I changed jobs and I needed a vehicle to commute the 25 miles each way every day, and came to the conclusion that the practicalities of owning a car over another motorcycle would win. Of course, the owning a company car on a day-to-day basis cost me very little to run, and therefore I didn't want to increase the cost more than necessary. So after a little research, I decided to seriously look at an electric vehicle. My company car was a BMW 3 Series, and so my first thought is to look at the i3. I had driven one about a year previously, and to be fair, it was quite an enjoyable car to drive. However, with an advertised range of only 80 miles, and knowing the way that I drive sometimes, I thought I would have to also consider the range extender. You know, to make sure I had the range to do my daily commute, plus a little of extra running around too. However, there were two issues with the BMW that meant that it wasn't the car for me. One is being that it's pretty expensive. It's pretty expensive to buy, but also additionally, it's only a four-seater, and having 3 teenage children, that made that it would be quite difficult to consider, because every time I went out in it, I'd have to think about which child I was going to leave behind. Now, I'd also took the opportunity to take a look at the Teslas. They looked fantastic. They were very well equipped. But the prices were just out of my reach. However, I have to say the salespeople in Tesla, despite being very friendly and very knowledgeable about their products, they were very persistent, with many wanting to many follow-up calls and emails, until I had to be quite blunt with them and tell them to stop contacting me. After ruling out the BMW and the Tesla, I went to have a look to see what else was out there. And to be fair, I didn't get very far. Because I walked into the Renault dealer and had a look at the Twizy, and yes, it was only a very quick look, as it didn't have the range that I was looking for, but it did have a very favourable price. I also looked at the Zoe, but again, favourable price, but quite a basic car and only 4 seats. I went into the dealer just to get a little bit more information, and despite trying to attract the attention of a few of the salespeople, who seemed particularly busy behind their computers and desks doing paperwork and other things, or whatever, I was pretty much ignored for about 10 to 15 minutes. So at this point, I decided to give up on them and go to the Nissan dealer, who was next door. Now, I hadn't actually looked at the Nissan Leaf previously and was quite surprised how large it was. It was quite easily seat 5 adults, and parking next to the BMW 3 Series, it was about the same length and a little bit taller. So, you know, I was quite impressed. The equipment levels were more than adequate, and therefore I didn't feel there was a need to spend the extra money on the high-end model. The mid-range model had more than what I needed, and so I had a quote on the mid-range. Now, bearing in mind I do 50 miles a day at least, a PCP plan on a new Leaf was more expensive than I'd anticipated. However, the sales guy told me he had a used one with a very low mileage, and I agreed to take it on a test drive there and then. I was very pleasantly surprised how well it drove and how easy it was to drive. I drove it quite some distance, to the extent that when I returned it, the battery was completely flat. And this also gave me confidence that it would do the mileage that I wanted to do on my daily commute without an issue. So I talked money with the sales guy to strike up a deal on a PCP, which meant that basically I was paying per month less than I would be paying in diesel on my BMW 3 Series with no deposit. So it felt like a free car. It felt like a no-brainer. So a year on, I still enjoy driving my Nissan Leaf. It's not perfect, and there are still issues that I have with it, but I still think it was a great deal. I easily get 80 miles range out of it, and now I'm looking forward to seeing what the next generation of Leaf will look like. It should look a lot more mainstream and have a much bigger range, a much longer range as well.